Matt Campbell's comments this week had me feeling optimistic about the injury situation, but the latest injury report is out, and I don't feel so optimistic anymore.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Marvitz. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're talking about Iowa State's injury status going into this big game against BYU. Then I'm, in the second segment, going to break down my personal keys to victory. What do I think this Iowa State team needs to do to beat BYU? I've got three big ones I'll hit on. Then finally, to round out today's show, a couple final thoughts, a couple justifications for the score prediction I put out yesterday, why I think that could be a real, the reality, essentially, of how this game could go. So I can't wait to dive into all of that and more. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, let's talk about this injury report for Iowa State. It's not pretty. I'm not going to lie to you. We are not looking at all flowers and rainbows on this injury report. That's more so what BYU is looking at, to be completely honest. This was the Wednesday report. I am recording this before the Thursday one comes out. If you have any questions on my thoughts on the Thursday report, you can find me at Nick_Marv, or obviously I check the comments as well. But as far as who's on this Wednesday report and where they're at, we have a handful of players in the out category. Let's just start there. We know these players will not be playing against BYU. Daniel Jackson, Michael Parks, two wide receivers, two running backs in River Peppers and Jaden Jackson. Not great there either. Eddie Lemos, the DB, Nick Reinecke, the linebacker, Ty Claiborne, the wide receiver, and Braden Simonson, the defensive lineman. Okay, a couple names that we kind of knew were going to be on there. Either way, not going to be playing. So no hope there. We've got a couple names in the doubtful category. This is where it starts to get interesting. And honestly, not ideal. Let's put it that way. Jace Gilbert, the kicker, will be or is doubtful right now. Dalen Hassert, the offensive lineman, currently doubtful. Dylan Malone, wide receiver, still doubtful. And Domonique Orange, listed as doubtful. Now, I will talk about what Matt Campbell said about these players in just a minute, but I want to get through the rest of this list because this is where we're starting to get like a little bit more positive, right? In the questionable category, we got four names. Excuse me. Kaijon Cummings-Coleman, defensive back, will be questionable for this game. Bo Goodwin, linebacker, questionable. Karen Brookins, questionable as a wide receiver. And Kyle Konrardy, questionable at that kicker position. Then we've got two guys that are listed as probable, kicker Chase Smith and running back Carson Hansen. So there are a few names on here that I feel relatively good about. Obviously, Carson Hansen, if he makes his return, that would be enormous for Iowa State in this game against BYU. But some names like Dom Orange at doubtful, I don't love that. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just going to call it straight up how it is. I don't think that's great. And we didn't really get a chance to talk about this because of the comments that Matt Campbell made about third down. I believe it was the Wednesday show that I broke down his comments. But he did make some comments about injury, so I wanted to revisit those. He said that Dom was out of practice, and he would have made those comments on Tuesday. So I wasn't necessarily super hopeful about Dom, but there was, at least the door was left open. And when is it not, I suppose? He said about Kyle that Kyle was trending up. The expectation is that he will play. Carson Hansen expect that he will play. Kaijon Cummings-Coleman is trending well, should play. Those were the three that I had written down. So I did honestly wasn't going to talk about this anyway, just because of, the way Matt Campbell approaches injuries. I don't put a lot of stock into it. I kind of just, let it go. And the chips fall where they do when game time comes around. Because even, to Matt Campbell's credit as well, if anybody is day to day, like literally it could be Thursday, you feel really good. Friday, you don't, you maybe push it a little too hard on Thursday or whatever. So there are going to be ups and downs with injuries. But also, I do think that Matt Campbell has the tendency to have guys that are maybe out for multiple weeks that are listed as day-to-day, right? So I personally don't put a ton into that. But when I read a couple of those, there's some names on there, expect him to play. I felt pretty good about. And all of those guys that he listed, Hansen, Kaijon Cummings-Coleman, and Kyle Konrardy, are either probable or questionable. So there is some level of trust that's being built there, which is nice. I do trust that Carson Hansen will be back in this one. Kaijon Cummings-Coleman still listed in that questionable. Anything questionable or below, I would say my interpretation is like right around 50-50, right? So I think we need him back, absolutely, but I'm not certain that he will be. As far as the doubtful players, like Dom Orange, at this point I'm out on if Dom Orange will play. I am going to say my guess is no. Now, obviously, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not on the practice field. I'm not in the AT room. I am nowhere near this team at all. So I don't have a direct, don't take this as like, oh, he's got it in. No, I don't know. But I'm just, based on him being in the doubtful, I'm ready to write that one off. Chase Smith and Kyle Konrardy, though, being listed as either questionable or probable is very good news for Iowa State. I would say that that's maybe the best news outside of Carson Hansen being in the probable category, because now we can have some idea of an offense back. We're not trotting out, basically offensive linemen to kick for us. We're not trotting out four stringers, which is nice. There is an element of that's good. Obviously, it could be Kyle Konrardy, but if it's not, it's still not Kyle Konrardy, and that does have to be considered. But if Kyle Konrardy comes back in this one, I think you're going to see an Iowa State offense that's a lot closer to what we saw, obviously, at the beginning of the season. I don't know what exactly was conversed about, what was coached, what was planned here or there or the other or anywhere else, but I don't think what Iowa State came up with in the absence of Kyle Konrardy was a successful offensive game plan. In my opinion, whatever they tried did not work. I had even opinions on what they could do differently, and that's how you know probably not doing it very well, because I don't really know what I'm talking about, to be fair. Like that's just not, I'm not an OC, right? So if Kyle Konrardy is back, we could see an offense that actually makes sense. That, I think, is the biggest thing for this Iowa State injury report. Now, of course, we want Kyle to come back when he's healthy. We want Kyle to come back when he's ready, mentally and physically, because this isn't the last season of Kyle Konrardy, right? We're going to have him again next year. So I suppose, knock on wood, just for good measure. But that's the biggest thing in this, is we want Kyle to come back when he's ready. But if he is ready, boy, that could be the missing link that Iowa State needs to beat BYU. I don't know what's going on third down over the last 2 weeks. We talked about it. The percentage just isn't there. Only went for it on fourth down one time against Colorado. I would have liked to have seen them go for it a few more times. That was just how I wanted the offense to be ran. It wasn't, and I don't think they saw the success that they needed to from the offense. I think, and I've said this before, I think that this Iowa State offense needs to be, they need to score a ton of points. They need to be highly effective to win games the rest of the season. Now, that's nothing against the defense, but I think that's the case. And when you get your starting kicker back, now, even the chip shot field goals, even the, obviously the 60-yard field goals are going to pump energy into a team, but even the chip shot field goals, when the drive gets stalled out right in front of the goal line or whatever the case might be, at least you're chipping away at a lead. At least you're putting points on the board. And that is the positive of bringing back a very good kicker, or at least having faith that you can kick it from, the 35-yard line. If we get inside the 40, we're coming away with points on this drive. We have now had success. And it's like those mini wins that people talk about, like stack up as many wins at the beginning of your day as you can. As many drives as Iowa State can come away with a win, that's a step in the right direction. So, yeah, there are a ton of names on here. We could talk about the guys who are out, the guys that are doubtful, the guys, and I guess we are talking about the questionable guys in Kyle Konrardy, but I'm not too worried about breaking down how this team is going to change with guys that aren't going to play. I want to know, if Kyle Konrardy plays, is this team significantly better? I think so. I think yes. I think that they are able then to get some momentum built, string some drives together, and maybe that's the missing piece for this Iowa State team. I think that's huge news, personally. But is that a key to victory? No, I don't have that as one of my 3 keys to victory. To find out what those are, you'll have to stick around. They'll come up right here after this. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward was John Haycock's quote about how the team is currently handling their last two games, both being losses. He said that this team has something to live for, something to hope for, and something to love. And that's what's keeping them going. And I think that not only does that apply to this football team, but it applies to life in general. And I thought that was a really wonderful quote, so I needed to highlight that here. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. It's just like there's more to every highlight. There's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. I've got three major keys to victory for Iowa State if they're going to beat BYU, and I'm going to break them down right here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We talked with Jake Hatch yesterday of Locked On BYU. Great conversation. Did a lot of talking about coaches, specific players, this, that, and the other. But we never really, we were having such a good time. We didn't really get down to my specific keys to victory for Iowa State to get this win. And I do think there are a couple of key things that Iowa State needs to do. If they don't do these things, I don't think that this team can win this game. First one, I think Rocco needs to be accurate with his throws. Okay. We're going to just ignore the play calling because at some point, if the throw's inaccurate, even if the play is called correctly, it's not going to matter. So I am going to go with Rocco needs to have some insane accuracy in this game. Put the ball where it needs to be on each receiver. And I will say this. Rocco was asked about kind of how they approached the bye week and whatever, and talked about how they went into the film room and talked with wide receivers about, make sure you're breaking here, doing this, doing that. It sounds like there was some miscommunication between Rocco and the wide receivers, which may be why balls looked like they were inaccurately thrown. That is a very real possibility, especially when you consider, it's easy to think like if it's going to be a corner and they run a post, yeah, that ball is going to be way off. It's going to be like 20 yards off. And when it's way off, it looks really bad, right? It's like, okay, obviously there was something that was wrong here. Somebody made a miscalculation on what they should be doing, whether it's the quarterback or the wide receiver or the tight end or the running back or whatever, the person receiving the ball. One of those two people was wrong, and it's obvious. It's not as obvious when the intended receiver might go a yard too far or a yard too short or cut just a little too late, and that ball looks like it's thrown out in front of them, or they cut too early and it looks like that ball's way behind them, right? Those are the kinds of things that we don't necessarily know for sure. We can't make decisive, someone was wrong on this play. It just looks like Rocco was slightly off. So I do think we'll see some higher level accuracy from Rocco Becht in this game because of the revisiting of the fundamentals, revisiting of what the expectations are on certain plays over this bye week. And I think that's a huge thing for Iowa State, is to basically get to utilize a bye week ahead of BYU, a major game this season. But I think Rocco needs to be accurate. And really, what is the result of that? For me, it's, you can kind of point out the point A, but the point B here is the offense needs to get theirs when they can. This offense needs to capitalize when given the opportunity to make a big play, to make a splash play, to turn this game on its head. If there's a couple plays in every single game that define the 60 minutes of football, right? And I think we all know this. And I think there's that Parker Fleming graph out there that talks about like in the margins or whatever. And then like there's like 6 plays that are really, they aren't on that graph because one safety tripped and it resulted in an 80-yard touchdown. Like that's unfortunate, right? That was a game-breaking play. If Iowa State gets the opportunity to be on the positive side of any of those game-breaking plays, any of those major plays, they need to capitalize, right? But how do you do that? You don't know when those plays are going to happen. Well, you've got to be right every single play. So I said, Rocco needs to be accurate on every single one of his throws. Now, obviously, you can say the offensive line needs to win up front. It's a battle in the trenches. I agree. But this is kind of like what I was saying yesterday. Every game is won and lost in the trenches, in my opinion. Every game is dependent on the turnover battle, and I'll bring that up here in a second. But I don't love using those as my keys to victory because it's like, well, if you are unable to win at the line of scrimmage, yeah, you're going to lose a lot of games. If you're losing games turnover battle-wise 5-0, you're not going to win a lot of those games. You're just not. It doesn't matter how well you play the rest of the game. 5 turnovers is going to be a problem. You better be getting 5 back. You can't be net negative 5 turnovers and win a lot of games. So like obviously the offensive line needs to block well to give Carson Hansen or Abusama a chance to break up field and get to the second level and tear them up over the course of the game and maybe rip one wide open. Like, yeah, of course, that makes complete sense, but I'm not going to say that it needs to be the offensive line that's really going to show up. I think the offensive line and defensive line both need to be ready for a fight. They need to win in the trenches if Iowa State wants to win. My second key to victory here, defense needs to bend, not break. Okay. Bear Bachmeier is going to get his. He's going to play well. We know how well he's played so far this season. Don't get too concerned with him going from, Iowa State's 10 or, BYU's 10 to Iowa State's 20. Would that be a 70-yard drive? I was playing college football the other day, and I'd given up this super long drive, and they were on the 20, and things were not looking good. But all I thought was they haven't scored yet. They haven't even kicked the field goal yet. Like, if that's worst case scenario, they still haven't even done that yet. Who's to say that doesn't get missed? Who's to say that doesn't get blocked? They haven't scored until they've actually scored, right? You can bend, but if you don't break, you still have a chance. So that's what I want to see from this Iowa State defense. I'm not saying that they need to force a 3-and-out every single drive. They need to go out and get a ton of turnovers, although I do have that in parentheses here. One turnover would be huge. If Iowa State can win the turnover battle in this one, it's going to be enormous, but I'm not going to make that a key to victory. If they can just stop BYU from getting in the end zone a few times and Iowa State answers with touchdowns of their own, that's a win. And I think that's going to be huge in this one because BYU is going to get theirs. They're going to move down the field. Just don't be giving up 60-yard touchdowns. Make them earn it. Make them drive their way all the way into the end zone, as opposed to if they come up short, that's a win. I think that's a major win. Obviously, you want them to punt it more than they score. Like, duh. But no, I think that if they can hold them from getting into the end zone, that's a win for that defense. Finally, this one's interesting to me. We talked about Bear Bachmeier, what he's capable of doing and how great he's been for BYU, but we didn't talk about LJ Martin that much. Their running back, number 4 for BYU. I looked at their BYU's 4 Big 12 games here. Colorado, Utah, obviously, last week, West Virginia, and Arizona are their 4 in-conference games. In 2 of these games, Bear Bachmeier is the leading rusher, if I am correct in that. He was the leading rusher against Colorado, and I am incorrect. Okay, I was just double-checking myself. He's the leading rusher in 1. So he was the leading rusher against Colorado. But in the other 3, he's the number 2 rusher behind LJ Martin. Okay. Oftentimes, I'm not going to lie to you, there's not a huge drop-off. So obviously, led against Colorado. But in the other 3 games, LJ Martin had 122, Bear Bachmeier had 64. Against West Virginia, LJ Martin had 90, Bear Bachmeier had 43. Against Arizona, LJ Martin had 162, Bear Bachmeier had 89. In all of those 3 games, the drop-off is after Bear Bachmeier. It's 89 and then 6. Okay. It's 43 and then 11. It's 64 and then 16 yards. So that's 2 guys. There's 2 guys rushing for BYU is essentially what I'm gathering here. If Iowa State can stop LJ Martin, look, Bear Bachmeier is going to have to do it all then because, yeah, he can still run it, but then he's got to go back there and be quarterback again. If LJ Martin rips one for 60 yards, he can either go to the sideline or just kind of stand back there in a pass protection play very next snap, right? He doesn't have to go back there and either launch one or hand it off or understand what the defense is giving him. As Jake was talking about with getting 2 plays in, you have to, as the quarterback, always have every single play, the ball is in your hands. So if Iowa State can hold LJ Martin to, a modest, let's call it 40-yard game, just something relatively, I would say that's shutting them down. Obviously, that's not going to be all of the rushing yards for the game, but one player around 40 yards, that's a pretty good day. If you can hold Martin under like 40, 50 yards and force Bear Bachmeier to be their leading rushing attack, you're kind of forcing him to do a lot. He's either going to beat you on the ground or he's going to have to beat you through the air. And if he beats you on the ground, he's going to be more tired. Like it's just hard to do. So I'm okay with Iowa State stopping LJ Martin. That's my third key to victory. It's a little bit of a nugget. It's an oddly specific one. And I understand that there's a chance that Bear Bachmeier can do that. If you stop LJ Martin, there's a chance that Bear Bachmeier can still rush. I mean, look at his stats against Colorado. Rushed for 98, threw for 179 and 2 touchdowns. He can still do it. Just make him do it. Make him. Don't just give BYU, let LJ Martin run for 122 and Bear can throw for 166 and it's this dynamic duo and he gets 64 of his own on the ground. Look, I think Bear Bachmeier is going to get his on the ground anyway. Like, just force him to either be tired or throw. I personally think that could be a big piece of this game. But there is always more than meets the eye with this Iowa State team. So let's have some final thoughts. Let's wrap this up in one pretty little bow before the homecoming game this weekend. We're going to do that coming up right here after this. It's time for this week's MVP on who delivered. And as it's almost the weekend, we've got to look back. It's powered by DoorDash, just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Iowa State, I'm going to go with John Haycock. As I said, obviously, with the bye week, you could even go Matt Campbell. They've got to step in and get this team right. I think they did just that. I'm proud of the coaches that Iowa State has right now, and I think that they are very capable of getting Iowa State back in the right headspace, back on the road to the Big 12 championship. Just like Iowa State coaches, John Haycock and Matt Campbell delivered for Iowa State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting than just baseline watching it when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Final thoughts here against BYU in this matchup for Iowa State here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I think it's been a tough week. I'm not going to lie. This has been a weird week, obviously coming off of 2 straight losses. You do have the bye, but how do you perceive the bye? You're playing one of the toughest teams in the Big 12 Conference right now for Iowa State. Where is your head at? I'd be curious to know. You can let me know at Nick_Marv or in the comment section down below. I've gone back and forth on this game. And ultimately, it's really just because Iowa State is so beat up. I've seen a lot of comments online talking about if Iowa State was healthy. That's very much a coulda, shoulda, woulda situation for me. I'm over it. I'm looking at the team as they are now. As John Haycock said, like, not what was this team at the beginning of the season. Who is this team now? And I think they have a chance. That's kind of my final thought here. And well, obviously I have a couple more written down, but my biggest one is there's no reason to stop believing in this Iowa State squad. I still think they have an unbelievable amount of talent on offense, and defensively, they went through something like this last season with their linebackers. Guys have to step up. It's next man up mentality at Iowa State. Just because you're missing your top 2 corners and your safety's decimated, your secondary's decimated, and now you're missing a defensive lineman. Like, yeah, your team's beat up, but you still have to go out there and play. So what are you going to, what decision are you going to make? And I think Iowa State players make the decision to go out there and play hard. And obviously Iowa State dropped 2 in a row last season, decimated by injuries, and still made the Big 12 championship game. I don't see any reason ahead of this BYU game to quit on this team, to quit on this season, to quit on this coaching staff, to quit on these players. Like, this is the most important time for Iowa State fans to believe in them. That right? I feel like that is this is it. And obviously it's homecoming, and it's a sellout, and it's no whiteout, but it is certainly a major game in Iowa State's season. I think just perception-wise, it's easy to say, well, if only we had everyone at full health, and yeah, man, we really would be undefeated right now. This would be a battle of the greats. We'd definitely win that game, but I don't know anymore. Like, no, this is the time to say, we may have a few guys down, but we're not out. We are still in this thing. obviously, if we'll see how this game goes and we'll reevaluate on Monday. But right now, there's no reason why they can't win this game. They aren't starting the game down 80 points. It starts 0-0, and it all depends on how it ends. So that was my first thought on this game, because I think there's a lot of discourse online that wasn't exactly the same as it's been the first 5 weeks or whatever, even this first 6 weeks after the loss to Cincinnati. And that's kind of where I sit right now. It's easy to get caught up in the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. Let's worry about who this team is. And I still think that they have the talent. Now, as far as players on the field, what I expect from this team, my final thoughts, like I've said 1,000 times, this offense needs to come out humming. And there is going to be an element of, you're at home, let's get some momentum. If Iowa State goes into the half with 3 points, maybe a missed field goal, a made field goal, and 2 drives that sputtered out around the 40 that had to be punted away, inside of BYU territory or whatever, it's not going to look the same as if Iowa State is either in a shootout, it's close, or if Iowa State is up by 14 or whatever at half. Just throwing out situations, keep the crowd involved. That's going to be key in this one. It's not a key to victory, but it is certainly important. You're back at home. Make the most of it. I think Iowa State has to come out on offense and look really, really solid. If I had to pick between offense or defense, I'm picking offense every single time. This offense has the capability to score a bunch of points. Come out and do it. This is a good BYU team. You can do that. You can absolutely do that. I want to see some great play calls from Taylor Mauser. I think defensively, you just kind of got to roll with the punches. You just got to do what you can. You got to stay alive out there. Like I said, force them to field goals, right? Bend, don't break mentality from the defense. I think we've heard what the crowd's going to be like. If you can keep them in it, if you can, obviously we talked about how good Iowa State has been at home over the last 2 years. If you can keep Iowa State's crowd in it, that's going to be huge. That is going to be enormous in this game. I think the rest of the season is easy to look at. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. It's one play at a time mentality for this Iowa State team. Looking at the 31-30 prediction I gave, it's a hopeful prediction. And the reason I went with that is I think that Iowa State, the only way I see Iowa State winning this game, and I could be wrong, the only way I see Iowa State winning this game is if they win it in a semi-shootout fashion. I don't know if we can hold BYU to less than 20 points. Okay. I gave them 30. And then I was hopeful in thinking Iowa State can score 31, 4 touchdowns and a field goal. Is that wishful thinking? Is that hopeful thinking? Maybe. But I think it's what needs to happen. And I think Iowa State's capable of winning this game. I think they're capable of scoring 31 points. We'll see if they can actually do it. So the way I think that the 31 points plays out, or I think the way that it should play out if Iowa State wants to win this game, you go up 14-7 early. Maybe you start with the ball 7, get a stop. You go 14. You let them score 14-7, go into the half, whatever. Come out firing out of the halftime, 21-7. You give up a short run from BYU. Maybe it's 2 field goals, whatever. What would that be? If it was 21-7, then it's 21-13. You score to 28-13, and then BYU makes a small run, but it comes up short. That's how I think this game probably has to go. I think Iowa State has to get out in front early and to keep that crowd involved, keep them around. That's how I think it has to go. And I think they're very capable of doing that. So let me know what you guys think down below. What's your score prediction? How do you think this one plays out? I've got Iowa State 31-30, and it's a must-win. As I've said, every game is a must-win for Iowa State for the rest of the way. That being said, thank you guys so much for making it to this point in the episode. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.